Moana was the first princess movie released by Disney since Frozen, which was one of the studio's most successful movies, both among the critics and because it earned Disney a lot of money. For years since the moment Frozen came out, the songs and characters from this movie were absolutely everywhere, to the point where it became kind of popular to shit on Frozen simply because everyone was so done with this franchise basically jumping out at you every single time you opened your fridge. So, needless to say, Moana had some pretty big shoes to fill. Thankfully, it was in good hands because it was directed by the same people who were responsible for some of Disney classics, such as Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, Hercules, Treasure Planet, or The Princess and the Frog. The film features 7 original songs by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's mainly known for his work on Hamilton from Broadway and Opetaya of Hawaii. The score was written by composer Mark Mancina, who also worked on Brother Bear and Tarzan. The movie follows a pretty standard hero journey story about a girl who gets chosen by the ocean to find Maui, the demigod that she knows from the childhood stories told to her by her grandma. Maui is the one who stole the heart from Te Fiti, the mother island and legendary goddess of life and fertility. This resulted in a sort of chain reaction that caused the destruction of flora and fauna that's spreading across the world and destroying everything. And the only hope to save the world is to find Maui and make him return the heart back to Te Fiti. The problem is, aside from all the destruction and chaos, stealing the heart led to the birth of Te Ka, a demon of earth and fire who fought Maui and stranded him on the ocean for centuries as a sort of punishment for his actions. At first glance, Moana seems to follow a pretty common formula, one that's been used not only in Disney movies but also in storytelling in general for, well, basically forever. There's nothing inherently new or surprising about the story, and yet it works, and I would even go as far as to say that it was a bit of a fresh air when it comes to Disney animation at the time. Sure, maybe it wasn't as popular as Frozen or didn't have this fairy tale charm that Tangled had, but it was a solid story with a lot of heart put into it. Moana is a good example of why this sort of formula works and why stories following it can still surprise us in a good way even if we've seen it a million times before. I'm personally a huge fan of trope subversion, especially when it comes to the Chosen One trope, which throughout the years gained a bit of a bad reputation. I think everyone can think of several examples of this trope not being utilized well in the story, and since it's so popular, it's easy to feel like it's overdone at this point. That's the kind of problem that often comes with things that are considered to be overused in fiction, especially if it always follows the same kind of formula without playing with the form or doing anything interesting with it. Part of the reason why people are tired of this trope is certainly because we know how this story goes and that the chosen one always wins. So there is no sense of suspense. If it is the character's destiny to succeed, then obviously they are going to succeed, especially if the future of the entire universe depends on it. It's also very easy to make the Chosen One characters devoid of personality beyond what the narrative needs them to be, which can make rooting for them kind of difficult. Moana manages to avoid this issue by giving her actual believable personality and insecurities regarding her role as the Chosen One. It also gives her something that many stories about the Chosen Ones never do. It gives her an out. And it does so in a way that highlights the reason why she was chosen in the first place, and also allows her the kind of agency that many Chosen Ones lack due to the very nature of this trope. Moana is a very compelling character because in a way she is the one choosing her path rather than allowing the external forces to make that choice for her. It's not that Moana is stronger or smarter than everyone else, or that she really wants to be the chosen one. Although to be fair, she kind of does. Which makes it all the funnier that it takes her so long to realize why she was chosen, especially when she spends so much time obsessing over it. She doesn't get chosen because it was destined to be her, or because she has some hidden talent that we only discover at the end of our journey, that's unique to her and only her. She gets to be the one who restores the heart because she is compassionate and capable to look beyond the surface, and because even given a choice to back out and go home, she can't bring herself to do this. The moment of her reaching out for the heart that she previously rejected and then breaking the surface with it in her hand is so important and symbolic, and if someone asked me why I think that animation is the best medium when it comes to storytelling, it would be probably one of the scenes I would show to prove that statement. It's a beautifully animated scene, and watching it you really understand how significant this choice is. She's no longer doing this because she wants to feel special or because she was told that she's supposed to do this, and was never given a chance to decide that she would rather stay home. Moreover, the movie explicitly admits that this sort of responsibility shouldn't have ever been placed on Moana's shoulders in the first place, and that her desperate need to prove herself that caused Maui's fishhook to get damaged was because she felt pressured and overwhelmed. It's only when that pressure is lifted from her shoulders that she can truly accept her role, not because she's being told that she has to do it, but because she chooses to. And it really shows how destructive being the chosen one can be, how the person burdened with this responsibility can get either overconfident in their own abilities or break under depression when they feel like they can't be the person the universe needs them to be. Another mistake that many chosen one stories make is making the supporting cast expendable by basically only having them there to support the main hero in any way they need without having an important arc of their own. That's not the case with Moana though, as Maui not only has his own arc, but is also a relevant part of the story from start to finish. At the beginning of the movie, Maui is shown as kind of a villain, the one responsible for the destruction that forces Moana to leave Motunui and go on a dangerous mission to restore the heart. However, as we get to know him better, we find out that he didn't steal from Te Fiti for selfish reasons. Maui is a character from Polynesian mythology, but like in most such cases, Disney took some creative liberties when it comes to their interpretation of him. It was actually met with some controversy when the design was first released, as in mythology he is presented as a fairly slim young man or even a teenager, and Disney's design is quite different from how he is usually depicted. It's also important to note that Maui from the legends had supernatural powers of his own, while in the film most of them are attributed to the hook that he got as a gift from gods that allows him to shapeshift into different creatures. The creators actually really committed to the whole idea of portraying Maui as the villain of the story, as it's even seen in the way he is animated at the beginning. His movements and facial expressions are menacing and villainous. In the first part of the movie, his features are presented as quite harsh and often hidden in the shadows, but as we get to know him and his motivations better, his features soften and get more round as our perception of him changes. It really sells the idea that he's actually been horribly misjudged, and it takes Moana's compassion and acceptance to make him less self-centered and to realize his mistakes. We see that this harsh and detached persona that he presents at first is a result of his insecurities and trauma and not his true self. And this theme of self-discovery is basically what the whole movie is about. In Maui's case, it's about him opening up about his past, regaining his self-confidence, and accepting that his worth isn't tied to what he can offer to others. Also, I have to mention that I really appreciate that Maui being proud of his achievements is never treated as a bad thing. Yes, he is self-centered, but he does mellow out as the story progresses, and the lesson is more about him becoming less of a bragging asshole as opposed to acting like he has nothing to be proud of. And there's also the fact that it's so closely tied to Maui's backstory. Yes, he is overcompensating, but that's because of a deep insecurity caused by being abandoned by his parents and seeking reassurance that he is special and worthy of love and validation. And I think it's a really interesting conflict for a character in a movie targeted mainly at children, to have someone admit that maybe all the good stuff they're doing is because deep down they don't feel worthy of love and appreciation. And no matter how much they keep giving, they will never be able to feel truly fulfilled. Which is why this scene is so important to Maui's development.
Without my hook, I am nothing!
So, while I'm not a fan of this whole conflict with one character suddenly turning against the protagonist because of a misunderstanding or trauma that didn't deal with, at least in Moana it's set up fairly well and you see where Maui is coming from. We understand that Maui spent centuries associating his self-worth with that hook and that without it he doesn't feel like he's capable of doing all these heroic acts. So later when this scene happens...
I'm sorry about your hook.
Well, hook, no hook. I'm Maui.
It feels like actual character development, one that he desperately needed. Moana assures Maui that he's special because of who he is, not just because he's been recognized by the gods and has a magical artifact to show for it. She also recognizes that his ego is, at least to some extent, a result of his deeply rooted fears. The movie doesn't act like Maui deserves the loneliness he experienced due to stealing the heart. There's this interesting parallel between Maui and Moana's father that I actually really enjoy. The movie gives us these little pieces of information so that when the time comes we understand that Maui's actions come from a place of trauma and hurt, and it offers acceptance and empathy as the solution while still establishing that we need to find a way to heal and move on, because clinging to this trauma is destructive not only to us but also our relationships. It doesn't excuse these actions, but it explains them, and explains why these characters are acting the way they do, and shows that some pain can take a lot of time to heal. So what Moana does is accept Maui, but what I really like is that she still holds him accountable and expects him to make things right. We see it with Te Fiti as well. The loss of the heart transforms her into something she's not, into something angry and corrupted, a raging and destructive monster. And Moana is able to see past that hurt and destruction and realize that Te Fiti was Te Kā all this time. Like I said before, Moana is an amazing subversion of the chosen one trope because she is the one who chooses what her fate will be, as opposed to being like some kind of puppet in destiny's hands. It's also helped by the fact that Moana herself doesn't really know why she was chosen. And we also only understand at the very end of the movie that what truly makes her the one is the fact that she chooses kindness and compassion even when it's inconvenient. I already talked about it when addressing the chosen one trope, but I wanted to point out one more thing. It's quite unique that the movie allows Moana to quit and return to her island without completing her mission, but what really makes it special is that it doesn't judge her for it. In fact, at this point in the story when that happens, the movie seems to be telling us, the audience, that this is indeed the right choice. Grandma Tala admits that she pressured Moana, and even though she had the best intentions, ultimately it was too much to expect from one person. What's significant is that we are assured that there's nothing cowardly about abandoning this mission. The future of the whole world has been placed on Moana's shoulders, and no one should carry this kind of responsibility, especially not a child. Besides, technically she did fulfill her mission. Keep in mind that she was only supposed to bring Maui to Te Fiti, which she did. It's not exactly her fault Maui stopped cooperating because of his own demons. Throughout the movie, we see Moana struggle with what it means to be the chosen one, questioning whether she's good enough and wondering if maybe the ocean made a mistake. It takes her almost giving up completely to realize that she was the one who chose this destiny and not the other way around. What I've also really loved about the execution of her arc is that they never portrayed her as someone who doesn't care about her island or is unhappy with this prospect of being the leader one day. We can see that she takes her job seriously and genuinely tries to connect with her people and be the best chief she can be. It's not an arc of a future leader who wishes she was free and allowed to do whatever she pleases. Her whole conflict comes from the fact that she doesn't know how to make these two sides of herself work. On one hand, she wants to go beyond the reef and explore the world like her ancestors did, and on the other, she knows that she's expected to stay and look after the island and her people. And yet, there's this yearning and genuine desire to leave and be a voyager, but we never get the impression that she wishes to be a normal girl or that she's resentful because of her responsibilities. That on its own is a very nice and quite unique approach when it comes to the Disney princess character archetype, as most Disney movies don't really explore what it means to be a princess, which is kind of funny actually, considering that the Disney princesses are basically some of the most recognizable fictional characters in the world. Like, most likely when you think about Snow White, Cinderella or The Little Mermaid, it's the Disney version that pops up in your head, even though all of these are based on fairy tales that have been around for centuries. Anyway, my point is, even though princesses are an important part of the Disney brand, most of them don't really get to do much princessing, and some of them even actively reject this role. It's nice to see the opposite of that. In Moana, we see that she would be a good and fair leader who listens to her people and wants what's best for them. She isn't rebelling against her father because she doesn't want to be the chief. She's rebelling because she doesn't want to sacrifice her own needs and dreams, and is constantly being told that she can't do both. It would have been so easy to take a more Merida-like route with her and have her reject being a princess and everything that comes with it. Instead, we see her treating her duties seriously and taking a lot of pride in her skills. The problem isn't that she doesn't want to be the chief, the problem is that it's not the only thing that defines her. I like how the story kind of goes full circle, with her discovering that her people used to be voyagers at the beginning of the movie, and then with the threat of Tekka gone, teaching her people everything she learned during her adventures so that they can continue the legacy of their ancestors. I think it's a really nice touch. She brings two things she loves the most together and chooses her own path, one that allows her to be herself to the fullest without sacrificing any part of who she is. I think it's a really nice message because no one is just one thing. And no one can define who you are the only person who can do that. There's more to us than what we do for a living or what we like, and Moana is very much a story of self-discovery and acceptance, learning how to find this sort of inner peace and fully accept the person we are deep inside. Above all though, it's a story about healing. And while Moana and Maui are great examples of this theme, there's actually one more character who's just as important as the two of them who also embodies this message. I've always enjoyed the twist at the end with Te Fiti being Tekka because it's so subtle and just makes sense. In the last decade, Disney animations often use the twist villain trope with, varying success. Often it feels like the creators were more concerned with shocking the viewers rather than telling a fun and compelling story where the characters had well-established and believable motivations. Thankfully, it seems that Disney is slowly abandoning this formula, but Moana is a good example of how to write these kinds of twists in a way that leaves the viewers satisfied and doesn't leave the impression that the twist came out of nowhere. What I also find interesting is that Te Kā actually means the burning one in Maori, and the name that was supposed to be used for Te Fiti and Te Kā before it was changed was Te Po, which means the dark one. Apparently, Ka is also a passive particle in most Polynesian languages, which is a reference to how without the heart, Te Fiti loses her identity, and it's only with Moana's help that she can heal and remember that all this resentment and hurt that Te Kā symbolizes isn't who she truly is. I love how the movie has this very unique approach to identity, and how it's basically saying that negative emotions can affect our sense of self. It's visible in all of the major characters of the movie, although obviously each of them represents it in slightly different ways. This search of who we are is a central theme of the movie, and I find it to be both a really enjoyable and rather hopeful commentary on human nature. I really hope that going forward Disney will produce more stories like this one, because in many ways it feels like the right direction to the studio, which in the past few years was more concerned with producing ugly, hyper-realistic remakes that no one wanted nor asked for. Moana really feels like Disney at its best, giving voice to people and cultures that often go underrepresented in media, providing a meaningful moral, and just being a solid and well-written piece of fiction that can be enjoyed by people of all ages. I've had a very love-hate relationship with Disney for years now, and even though recently it's definitely leaning more towards the hate, it's movies like Moana that remind me why I have so much sentiment and love to a variety of Disney productions. It hurts to see a studio with so many resources and undoubtedly talented and creative people go for repetitive money grabs when it's perfectly capable of making movies like Moana with lovable characters, great humor, and a lot of heart put into them. And every time I'm starting to think that Disney's best years are behind us and I won't experience the sense of wonder that I felt as a kid ever again, it manages to surprise me. There are clearly some passionate people interested in telling compelling and fun stories, and it's a shame that Moana feels more like an exception than a rule. If you like this video and would like to support my channel, subscribe and comment below. I would love to hear your thoughts on the topic of the Chosen One and twist villains tropes, and if you think that Moana uses them well. Thank you for watching and see you next time.